One of the first questions John asked me, he said, in all the decades you've been consulting with CEOs of big public companies, how many times have they called you for an ethical issue? And I said, never, and they probably won't. But when I go dig them up, we have to deal with them. So it's great to be here to chat with an amazingly fascinating group of people gathered here, right? I mean, you just want to, wish you could just do round robins with, but the brain wattage in here is like probably causing brownouts. Anyway, so I thought I'd take a little bit of a tact of, let's start looking at ethical dilemmas before they become them. What would that look like? So see if these sound familiar. Head of a supply chain had a $3.5 million capital investment approved to overhaul a plant to triple production. The head of marketing in the same division had their budget cut by 25%, and head of sales divided quota territories. Now you might look at that and go, why would they do that? Probably a little rough. 3 years later, that company was indicted for channel stuffing. Was foreseeable. Head of HR announces a hiring freeze. 2 days later, the most profitable business unit posts vacancies for 3 new positions. 2 years later, 25 former employees of this company were investigated for tax fraud because they came back in the form of consultants to the company and didn't report the income. Listen, the head of R&D is told the new product pipeline requires 20% higher throughput and must increase its yield from 2 to 5 new product launches in the next 18 months. Given no resources to add headcount and no new lab equipment, the head of marketing is so busy doing market research for existing products that they had no capacity to do research for potential new markets or products to guide their choices. If you're head of R&D, you think, well, that sucks. Sucks to be you. 2 years later, they had 2 massive high-quality product recalls on 2 of the new products. Was foreseeable. So I won't do my dramatic reading of those, but you get the idea, right? These things become ethical problems long before they're ethical issues. And so here's the pathway we see happening. So at first, organizations are systems. One of the things I love about what these guys are doing here at NYU is that they look at this systemically. There's a within, a between, and among component. There's what happens inside the heart and soul of leaders. There's what happens between the units and functions of an organization. And there's what happens systemically. And if you don't look at all 3 of those, you're going to miss this. But we think the petri dish that grows the ethical fungus we're trying to address, those seeds of failure are sown much sooner than we examine them. Organizations are systems. They're just containers of chaos. They're natural collections of tensions. They're supposed to be. That's why they're designed that way. But when those tensions that can be healthy and productive go unmanaged, they become contradictions, like the ones I just read to you. When those contradictions become systemic, you have exasperation. You have employees saying, are they stupid? Don't they see this? What's the matter with them? Who's asleep at the switch? That exasperation grows when, to cope with those contradictions, they begin to say, I got to put me first. I got to watch out for the people. I know what I'm going to get accountable for in my performance appraisal. My team, my people, whatever it is this is not self-interest. This is self-protection. These go first. And then they feel resentment. So to Lynn's point about fairness. Now we see that the introduction of injustice starts to happen. That's just wrong. They walk out of the budget allocation meeting, they walk out of the strategic planning session, and they didn't get their strategy adopted. Whatever happens, now my injustice is riled. Those noble, lofty goals are becoming a little bit of a second priority as I'm thinking about me. Self-preservation and self-protection eventually lead to self-interest. And unchecked self-interest leads to intentional ethical compromise. We see justification. Screw it. I'm not going down with the ship. Every man for himself. If this is how they want to do this, fine. And then you have entitlement. For what I've had to put up with, I deserve this. Right? So it's great that we want to have conversations about this end of the spectrum. I spend my life digging up here. So when I walk into organizations, I sit in a senior team meeting and I tell my CEOs, I'm going to count the number of dissenting moments that happen. And when the number is 0, I tell them, you're set up for failure. I'm going to look at what you tell me is your strategic position, your competitive place in the marketplace. I'm going to look at your budgets, your strategy documents, your resource allocations. I'm going to see if they all don't match what you say you want to be and who you are, you're set up for failure. The same fissures that set up ethical failure set up performance failure, and I think that's how we can get organizations to really care about this. Not because it's not the right thing to do, but to say don't wait till you're on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. As we all descend on Volkswagen now to study them, I'm sure we're going to find the seeds of that failure sown a decade ago.
Oh, yeah.
When the diesel division was underperforming,
Yeah.
when American markets we're going to find them a long time ago. That happened. So the Petri dish is a seam. It's the places and organizations where divisional loyalties, where the ability to care about another point of view is broken. And at those seams is where you see the places where the right ethical glue is not being used to link and guide the coordination of work across the boundaries. You have people who are too vertically minded to be any horizontally good. So, set that systemic, that's the among, aside. We've also known for about 2 decades now that 50 to 60% of executives fail within the first 18 months of their appointment. So think about the executive as that senior altitude of your organization, that first vice presidential or whatever that nomenclature is in your organization. Half of them to 60% of them fail, meaning they're not in the job anymore by their own choice, not by their choice. That's a lot of carnage, right? It's been that way for 2 decades. The recruiters love it because it's an annuity. But when it started to be our clients, it got personal. We had CEOs calling us and saying, I'm paying you to help these people. What's going on here? They're not showing up prepared. Well, so we decided we need to go find out. So we went back 10 years and did a 10-year longitudinal study that included, I won't bother you with the details of this, but 2,600 qualitative interviews. We isolated 100 executives in mid-ascent and followed them very carefully to understand what are these landmines? What are these things that are tripping up 60% of people who otherwise seem very promising? They seem like, well, these are really talented people. Turns out it's a wonder any of them succeed. It's a wonder that any of them don't fail. The bottom line, these are all stats you'll get when you get the slides. The bottom line is they were not prepared. So what happens when you put a bunch of unprepared executives to preside over a bunch of organizational tensions and contradictions they're not prepared to lead? It's not pretty. The great news is, the 50% that were succeeding, we were able to isolate why, and they did, is that my feedback? Oh, they did 4 things well. So here's what an executive that can build a holistic system and prevent those failures looks like. They could do 4 things well. We did 99 regression analyses on these because I kept not wanting the data to say it takes all 4 to be good, but it takes all 4 to be good, so we need to say it. I tell my clients all the time who they don't understand leadership is it's the ability to disappoint people at a rate they can absorb. What was interesting in our data, was we studied power. And we expected to find all the typical abuses of power for self-interest and indulgence and on the take, whatever. The biggest abuse of power was not the self-interest, it was the abandonment of power. It was the abdication of it, the inability to make decisions, the inability to push the organization, the inability to make hard choices about what was required. They need to be popular, they need to be liked. That was a far greater abuse of power than was lining my pockets or immoral things with secretaries or whatever. So, 4 things. They could make great decisions. They knew how to participate in organizational governance with the right data, the right voices, and the right intuition to make great decisions. They had breadth. They could go from being first chair to the conductor. They understood how the entire orchestra needed to sound, and they could bridge the seams across the organization. We've heard a lot about context today. These leaders were contextually intelligent. They understood the industry they competed in, they understood how their business fit into it, they understood the culture of the organization. It's amazing how many leaders are set up to fail, contextually, I'm so way over, before they get there. They're hired because they have this great track record of success, which implies they have a formula to slap on. You don't turn around so many supply chains, do it again. And it doesn't fit. And lastly, they had amazing relationships, up, down, and sideways. Bosses, peers, and direct reports, great relationships of trust and regard. So the good news is we can build leaders much sooner in their career to prepare them to preside over the seams of an organization and prevent those petri dishes from growing the wrong kind of things well before they do. Thanks.